to this hui with a karakia.
Mauri ora tātou, kei te tino kōtara ka hui mai nei tātou I tēnei wā, nā reira ngā mihi o te tāhau, are ki tō tātou nei hui tuatahi, mo tēnei tau 1925. Nā reira, ki noi tātou kia tau te rangi Māori. Start with our usual karakia. Pakataka tahau, pakataka tahau ki te uru, pakataka tahau ki te tōna, kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. E hi ake ana te akura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, ati hei Moriora. E te matua kāraua, me ngā kia puawai tō aroha, I roto o mātou nā katoa, koe nā te me nui tēnei au hurihuri ki ngā peke ngā he katoa. Mā te atua, tātou e manaki e te aki, e arahi roto tōna rangi Māori e tēnei rangi, me ngā rā heke mai nei. Nā reira, ka nui te mihi ki au koutou ko hui mai nei, e te tiamana, ka nui te mihi ki a koe, Martin, mui au ki te taumahatanga o tēnei o tō mahi, mō tō tātou nei rōpū, e pāna ki waka kotahi o tēnei kaunihera, a rohe o te mataua Māui. Nā reira, ka nui te mihi ki a koe, e te māngai, e te rangatira, e te tuakana hoki. Nā reira, kia ora, me koutou rā, ngā mema o tēnei poari, ka nui ta mihi ki a koutou, ara ki me ngā kaimahi, rice mā, me koutou rā, huri no, o tēnei whare, ka nui te mihi, ka nui te aroha ki a koutou. Nā reira, hoi anō, māti atua koutou e manaki e te ake. Kia ora.
Thank you very much, tēnā koe karakia. Api, thank you for that. I just want to touch on a bit of housekeeping before we move to the agenda. This meeting is being live streamed on Council's Facebook page and recorded for viewing at a later date on our YouTube channel. In an earthquake, drop cover and hold if the shaking is strong or long. When the shaking subsides, we go through the nearest exit. One of those air hostesses. And we meet in the assembling area on the corner of Votia and Dalton Streets. And we would make our way up through Tiffin Park onto Cameron Road if there's a need to do so. And the Wharepaku out the door to the right, as you would know. So I'd just like, firstly, having done that, to record apologies from Mayor Alex Walker and Councillor Yerafan Bake. Going to have a move that those apologies be accepted, please.
And apology from Councillor Kerr.
And from Councillor Kerr. So all three apologies. The mover is Keith. Thank you. And will you second that? Councillor Barrow, thank you. All in favour? Aye. Anyone against? Okay, all right. Conflict of interest declarations. Do we have any? There being none, we'll move on to confirm the minutes of the last meeting. For those, I wasn't present, regrettably. So would someone who was there be willing to move that they are true and correct record?
Mr. Chair, happy to move with just the minor amendment that my name doesn't have an H in it.
Happy to second, Mr. Chair.
Thank
with
you,
the minor
Councillor
amendment.
Taylor. I think that's all reasonably self-evident. There's a few matters in there that will be returning today. So, all those in favour of the minutes being confirmed?
No.
Anyone against? No. Right. Before we turn to the agenda, I'm actually going to break from the batting order, and I'd just like to take a moment to celebrate one of the most extraordinary funding announcements in this region's history. as to the State Highway Gorge improvements. We've got Linda here, and Mayor Little, I'd invite you to speak to that if you would wish to say anything about that particular announcement.
Yeah, you happy?
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, cheers for that, Martin. It's a really good day for us, to be quite honest, and the whole of Hawke's Bay as well as Tairāwhiti. It's been a significant journey for all of us, and honestly, to get it, Linda, is a credit to you guys, because there's a lot of funding being pulled out from under the rugs from everywhere around the country. So yeah, fantastic. So I'm just so thrilled about it, because I was out the other night at the expo in Wairon. People were talking about it all day. Just it might be only 5 or 10 minutes, but man, that helps. And it's just it's going to be quite an exciting project too.
Thank you.
Really good, and good to see you all up there. Your Linda's spot to do the announcement probably wasn't the perfect spot, because every time a car or truck went over the bridge, we couldn't hear anything.
So noisy.
But it was photo-wise, it was a good place.
It was great.
Yeah. Great news. And obviously, Martin, seeing you there too, but this is the significance of this committee.
Yeah.
We must keep hammering on around this table. Very good.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Little. I'll hand over to Linda in a moment, but my reflection on that is that we should always be aspirational in our transport planning, in our public transport planning, say what we want, and the time will come when Wellington will move into line. But one of the key factors that led to this being funded was the fact that it was our number one priority project in our regional transport plan, something that all those lobbying could lean on. So that's, I suppose, in some credit to us. Linda.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mayor Little. And yeah, that was what in part I just wanted to reinforce the importance of the Regional Transport Committee and the role that it does play. We spend a lot of time in the long-term planning and in the day-to-day, and sometimes it can feel like it takes a long time to get progress. But when moments like this happen, it does prove the case in point. It also as well reinforces the need for real clarity around your regional priorities and for all of us to be behind them. The strength of advocacy from the region is the other thing that I'd like to note. At every opportunity, a really joined up approach to both your MPs as well as ministers and directly to NZTA as well. It does make a meaningful difference. And then the important part is that we have full funding for the project. So full funding from property acquisition right through to the completion of construction as well. So it's now just a case of getting on with it. So property owners have been in discussions this week already. We'll be setting up and standing up the procurement strategy, and we're hoping to have all of that in place by the end of 2025 to begin construction proper. Really, really good that we've got the secure funding, good to make progress, but the key thing is now to keep the foot to the floor, if I can use that phrase, in our Regional Transport Committee and make it happen. So thank you, everyone.
Yeah. So I think actually Hawke's Bay has done incredibly well in the last 3 to 5 years when you think of the expressway and now this, so it wasn't one at the expense of the other, which is what we were worried about. And you think of the, the $600-700 million we got for road recovery post Cyclone Gabriel. We've got the long-term investment programs for State Highway 2 and State Highway 5 locked in place, which are truly aspirational. And there's been a huge amount of work going into our transport system design. So I think we're starting to build some momentum here. And so thank you to all for being part of that.
And I'd just say, Martin, also internally on our roads too, we've got 2 major bridges going up. One's a 14 million one, and one's a 6 million one, another one at Waikari. So that community is quite excited. A high level one to go across out to Glenbrook, and then Taringa. So, and all the other work, we've been very lucky too. So it's good that things are working,
Great. So that's a positive note to, I think, commence the work, the substantive work of this meeting. So with that, can we now move to item 5 on the agenda, which is the Regional Public Transport Review, and I'd invite Russell and Blythe to address any aspects of the paper that we've got that they want to share with us beyond what's there before we open up for discussion and questions.
All right, thank you, Chair. So we took the first draft of the updated version of the Regional Public Transport Plan to the committee at the 6th December meeting. But if we just rewind the clock a little bit in terms of context, the committee will recall that, of course, we went out in 2022 with a Regional Public Transport Plan that proposed a fairly significant reimagining, I guess we could say, of our public transport network, moving away from inefficient loop services to high efficiency, high frequency bi-directional services across the main urban areas of Napier and Hastings. That ultimately was supported by the community at the point in time. And subsequently, of course, endorsed by this committee and adopted by the Regional Council for implementation. At the time, we did say that we were going to be implementing the new network in 2025 in line with the contract expiry of the current current service provider. We had also said that upon implementation, we would be having increased frequency and extended operating hours with a view to increasing those again come 2030. Fast forward today, of course, we've had a cyclone, 33% indexation, driver wage uplift, and of course a change in government policy direction and subsequent changes in levels of funding, both local share and NLTF. So what that's meant is a few things. We of course have a reduced funding envelope from what we had anticipated or what we had applied for. And we also have a situation where we can no longer implement the levels of service that we had intended or the operating hours, but we may be in a position in the next, say, 18 to 24 months at some point to implement the network as planned at the current levels of service. So the overall thrust of this public transport plan consultation is that we are reconfirming our intent to implement this network. I guess communicating that the levels of service improvements and enhancements will take longer than we had initially anticipated, but we are effectively working feverishly to secure requisite funding to enable those over the long term. That goes both for frequency and extended operating hours, as well as things like enabling the Central Hawke's Bay Express trial that we were unsuccessful in funding for this round. Also exploring other potential funding avenues as they may crop up. Another thing that was in the 22 public transport plan, and we've again reconfirmed, is the intent to look a bit more at community transport as a viable option for transport services in outlying areas. Excuse me, I've just
You
lost
mean in
my...
important areas such as Central Hawke's Bay and Wairoa, for example?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. We will be, probably more like Russell, will be attending a community transport symposium next month up in Waikato, where community transport is quite successful up there, and they have a rating arrangement that secures a reasonable pool of funding to enable or help support community transport providers. So that's something that we could look at here as a starter for 10, and then find out ways to secure additional philanthropic funding to enable greater community transport uptake. So that's certainly something on the boil. The other key thrust of this current proposed consultation is that we will be strengthening the total mobility scheme to make it more sustainable, both in the short and the long term. So there's a range of policies that contained in the draft RPTP that have been either updated, added, or amended to just really put some structure and some controls around that scheme. So the overall, the intent of the RPTP is that it just reconfirms what we said we were going to do in 2022, simply later, due to a range of funding constraints. As part of that overall process, what we as a team will be looking at doing, and certainly in the lead up to the public consultation and potentially for a period after, depending how we go, is engaging with impacted communities and user groups to effectively ground truth the roots in their communities, make sure that they are right, that they service their needs, with a view to locking them down before we actually implement the network. We've written the significance policy in such a manner that it enables us to make those changes for certain communities without necessarily having to trigger a wide public consultation again. That just gives us a little bit of flexibility to actually validate everything and ground truth at the time. I think off the top of my head, those are kind of the key things from our perspective that we want to communicate to this committee. In terms of the consultation itself, that will be, as discussed at the 6th December meeting, that will be stitched up with the HBRC annual plan consultation. The logic being, one, it makes sense to combine consultations into one big hit. Two, because we're not fundamentally proposing any massive change to the network as proposed in 2022, then it sort of makes sense just to fold the consultation up into that nice little process. So Russell, if you had anything to add to that?
No, I don't think so. I think some of the aspects that Bryce has covered is going to be covered in some other papers through the session today, and especially around the importance about putting some greater controls around total mobility, which is one of our greater economic issues at the moment, is funding that.
All right.
Sorry, Chair, one other thing. Just in terms of the actual document for consultation itself, we haven't done it in this version. The committee is presented with the track changes version that sets out all of the additions or tweaks that we have made. For the document itself, the design document, in each page there will be a little sort of call out text box type thing that just highlights the key changes in that section or that page or whatever it is for ease of reference for the reader. We won't be having a large consultation document like we had with the Regional Land Transport Plan. It'll just be a few pages within the annual plan consultation with a couple of key questions and key points to communicate with the reader, and then a link to the actual plan should they wish to delve into the detail.
All right, look, I've got thank you, Bryce. That's a really helpful summary, and you guys have done a hell of a lot of work on this, not just preparing this, but working through the extension of the contract, working out what we can afford, putting up a business case for the future, trying to get to bi-directional within the funding we've got. It's really, really challenging. What I found challenging, though, is actually understanding what's in front of us. And I think my first point is that we actually need to compare right. There is a function in Word that will do this, that compares this against that. Because I've been through this now and I've identified, and I've probably got 50 or 60 green highlight areas that are changes to the changes that we saw last time. But when you read this, it was difficult to decipher without me literally reading two documents at once. What did we discuss in December? What's changed now that I really need to focus on this time? And that was disappointing actually to have to do that compare right function with 2 days between getting the document and now. And I've spotted in doing so that there is some text that was in the December version, aspects of which are important, that's gone without any track change. So I'm going to have to spend a little bit of time with the committee going through some of these issues today in order that we can safely give me and whoever else wants to join me a delegation to work with the staff to go through some of these rats and mice, because I don't want you going away without ensuring that everyone around this table is aware, given the 2 days we've had, exactly what we're signing off here and some of the implications of it. So if you'll forgive me for that, this next 30 minutes may not be the most fun 30 minutes you've ever had. But I don't think, given the significance of it, I'd be fulfilling our duties to the community not to have the conversation we're about to have now. So And I'll try and keep this to the minimum. Every one of these tags is a question or a discussion point that I need to raise, but I'm not going to do them all. I'm going to pick some of the highlights, and then I'll open it up to other questions. One of the issues we discussed was, at the workshop last year, was collaborating with other councils, a joint management unit, for example, and I'm going to Central Hawke's Bay in early March, and I want to get up to Wairoa, and I want to go to Napier and Hastings as well, and talk about whether there's an appetite for that. There is a really good new section about local councils and how everyone sort of plays a role in public transport. The thing that's changed relative to the December version that I'd asked for, and I thank you, Bryce, for including it, is a new bullet point on the page, bottom of page 22, which talks about policy alignment. So that if we've got a policy which is to increase patronage, policies around car park charging in the CBDs of our cities actually help that. And I read in the media, requests for free parking for certain sectors of the economy, society. Fine, but, we can't be pulling different levers in different directions, right? Joined up thinking. So that's the last bullet point there. I'll just draw that to your attention. We've got a new section on major employers as being part of this picture on page 23. That wasn't in the December version, and that's great. I'd ask for that. Thank you. The only thing I would say is that perhaps in addition to just talking to them about some of their needs, whether they'd actually be involved in provision of services and providing funding and complementing our network, with sort of on-demand services for their employees. So I think we need to add some reference to services, and I was going to discuss that with the staff. Where are we? And now, bottom of page 27, there's a sentence that I think has got a bit of a sting in it that I'm a bit worried about. Generally, however, this is to do with fare increases, and we're being encouraged by the government to increase our fare box recovery. And there's an issue there, if you want to increase patronage, there's a point at which increasing the fares drops the patronage, so it's actually counterproductive. You end up getting less money because no one gets on the bus. It's cheaper to buy, get on a car. So, but it says here, generally, fare box, this is right at the bottom of page 27 or 26 of the document, at a greater, and I just didn't understand this, fare increases at a greater increase than background public transport cost increases might otherwise require can be expected over the next 6 years. Why?
If I can answer that, Mr.
Yeah,
Chair.
good.
So, at the moment, the amount of fares that cover the cost of the services is at a reasonably all-time low, excusing the last couple of years. So we're looking at a fare recovery of about 9.5%. To give you context, back before 2018, it was 24%. So back in about 2018, we were looking at a cash fare to go between Napier and Hastings of $3 to $4. It's still that same amount. So those fares have never kept up with inflation, etc. Through various central government actions around cost of living. So our fares have not increased, but our costs have increased. And so we've got so far behind the 8 ball that that's where we are. So we have to get back to something that is we're suggesting is a little bit more of the user paying a greater proportion. And that's also backed up through what we call private share, is how much fares and advertising, sales, etc. contribute, and that's something that we've been working with NZTA, and it's a very strong push of theirs as a co-investor at the moment, is that they see that private share increase. So that's the reason behind that. So the fares have dropped behind, the actual proportion of what people actually pay has fallen behind.
So we need to recover.
Yeah,
Make up for lost ground.
But we don't want to be doing that at a huge expense of patronage. So it's small increments, and everybody accepts that from for NZTA, and we're just putting that to you as a committee, is that's the direction we want to head.
Yeah, I mean, and we've got a policy that you consult on anything above 10% in a year. I raised this because, and the reason I'm belabouring this is it's us that get phone calls from the community, right? What the hell have you done? The bus fare's just gone up to $4. Are you kidding? That's the phone call you get, right? So that's why I'm sorry for dealing with some of this detail.
Yep.
I just want you to understand. Thank you for that answer. That's helpful. One of the things that the next point, page 31, it says ensure the network, this is a bullet point on access to services, caters for patterns of student travel that are likely to overcrowd already scheduled public buses on established urban routes. That's setting ourselves up to fail, because the Ministry of Education is cutting funding and they're swamping our buses, and we're saying that we will ensure that that we cater for that. So that needs some work, doesn't it? We can't.
We thought very, very carefully about this, and between the team debated whether or not we actually strip it out, but that would probably be reasonably inequitable and cut off a significant chunk of the community. I think what we're really trying to get at there is obviously on the existing network, on the existing routes where there are students who may or may not use public transport to get to their school, if we see a significant increase in, say, peak time demand, we would then have to make sure we have some provision somewhere to be able to put on an overflow service. We already have a few of those in the network currently, but that's not to say or to signal that we, as the Regional Council and the Public Transport Authority, want to get into the business of school buses.
Right. Well,
so perhaps, yes, it does need some
subject to
work.
funding and capacity, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't take all the buses off another route to go and get all the kids from Havelock High into Clive or something, you know, it's not going to work. Okay, so that's just a point. There's a couple of points on the next page where we've lost the policy to do with zero pipe emissions. That's gone from buses under 4.2.3, but wasn't shown track change. And I want to know why that one's gone, but I'm more interested in why it's gone without us knowing it's gone.
We removed that one because we've effectively said that the new contract and the provision or the procurement of the rolling stock will be in line with RUB requirements, which are the same thing that as far as we're aware, has not changed, and so it will be zero tailpipe emissions.
But why didn't you show it track change? Is that just a mistake? Because we need to, this is why, you know, understand this is gone, but we don't understand that it's gone, and yet we're being asked to sign it off, and that's what's actually making me quite grumpy. And I admit that it's tricky with documents, you're turning changes on and off, but yeah, I think I've made my point. So I think that needs to be shown as a track change.
Sure.
If there's a reason for it, because people in our community will say, what the hell are you doing that for? Right? And I think that's an important one, because we've got an objective of a low emissions public transport system. There's another one, the same thing, ensure information for sight impaired was under information availability. That's gone after 27, and that was in the December version, but it's not here, and it's not shown removed. So I think, why are we taking it out, or was that just a mistake?
No, again, that must have been a mistake. Apologies.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll work on getting that back in. And then there's another one, similar vein, it's been gone without track change. On the following page, bus stops and information, there was investigate real-time bus arrival information was the last bullet point on bus stops and timetable. That's gone without a track change. Why wouldn't we do that?
If I can answer that, Mr. Chair, because we've done it.
Okay. All right. Well, again,
So it should be in the track change.
show the
but
track
we've
change,
actually
and then
done it.
if someone asks the question, like I just did,
Yeah.
but you don't know what you...
Yes, yeah, why is it gone? Yeah.
Yeah. The next change I've noted on page 35, monitor and review the new rollout following full implementation. So we'd only monitor it annually after full implementation. Why wouldn't we monitor it during implementation?
The data that we're able to get during the implementation may be reasonably patchy. There will, of course, be a transition period that likely will take longer and maybe be a little bit more painful than we would like to think or anticipate. So if we're able to get some longer-term data, that will give us greater insights to actually be able to assess with a degree of confidence the effectiveness of the network.
Okay. All right, I mean, there is a reference to monitoring as he goes, just like you're saying, your annual monitoring would commence, so there is still monitoring on the way. If we go to total mobility, you say here, it's just, I couldn't quite, I was going to ask this when we get to the paper. The minimum fare chargeable within the fare concession levels must not exceed $25.
Yeah, so,
Can you explain that to me? The
Yeah.
minimum fare
yeah, so.
can't be bigger than, what does that mean?
Yeah, so through the chair, many of our total mobility providers, especially the companion services, for instance, Driving Miss Daisy, Driving with You, have a minimum fare, typically between $20 and $25. So a operator can provide us a fare schedule, and we don't actually have many, or previously didn't have many boundaries around what we would and wouldn't accept. And so the minimum fare is something that the companion services put in place. And so we want to make sure that there was a cap on what their minimum fare was.
Before you're eligible for the service?
Before the service provider must assure us that by way of their fare schedule that their minimum fare is no greater than $25. Have I?
Otherwise,
managed to confuse you?
otherwise we don't need to subsidise them. Is that
In
what
other
you're
words, we wouldn't accept them
That's
as
it.
an operator. Yeah, so it's nothing to do with the fare concession. So the fare concession is
Does
still,
everyone else understand that? So if you get a $5 taxi ride,
yeah. But that's
What?
a taxi, yeah. But if I call up, say, Driving Miss Daisy and said, I want to go from A to B, their minimum fare before they arrive at your place starts at 25. Whereas if you're on a taxi, your minimum fare starts at, it's a flag fall of $3.50 before you go anywhere. So they're two different.
for some reason my brain is just simply not able to compute that.
Look, I think we've tried to write it in such a way, but it's a difficult one to describe.
Yes, okay, well, I still don't understand the concept, never mind.
Yeah.
Maybe not be troubling anyone else. Just, there was reference to, we provide the service for those who meet eligibility criteria and have a permanent disability. That was on the previous section. Why is that wording gone? Because it's not shown. You put it in December and it's come out again.
Do you mean table 6, transport for people with a permanent disability?
Yeah, it says, in line with our policy and for those passengers who meet the eligibility criteria and have a permanent disability, we've taken out those words. Why would we take out those words?
Again, that must
Okay.
be a mistake, that one.
Okay, I won't bore you too much more, team, but
What else, have you got anything else to do at night, Martin? Very good.
yeah. You'd think so, wouldn't you? Do
well
you think I should have done this job? Is it my job to do this, do you think, Craig?
Probably not, no.
No.
I thought Kate might have picked them up, but.
Is it good that I've done this
Oh,
job?
I think
do
it's
you think?
fantastic.
Yeah.
Because they would have just slipped through without us knowing.
Okay. On the next page, we're accrediting assessment agencies. What's an assessment agency?
They're through the chair, they're the agencies who, for instance, a CCS or age concern, they actually assess whether the person is eligible for total mobility. So they say, can this person drive or not drive? Can they catch public transport or not catch public transport?
All right, look, a lot of the changes that are in the next, and there's a lot of changes in the next part of the document around what we're doing with planned activities that are really saying, and this wasn't in the December version, short term, it's basically status quo. Long term, which means post 2026, it's going up to these things, and I'm sure you're all across that and the reasons for it. I just wanted to note, what was it? Oh, look, there's a couple of wording changes I can probably discuss with you that aren't significant in that area. I think dropped the ball there. There was something I wanted to raise that was a bit more significant.
And just while you're looking, what concerns me is the bits that you might not have picked up.
Yeah.
That's probably, we need to go back and,
Well, that's why I've asked for a compare right with the original document. So I'll just do a couple more maybe, but those are the main changes from this stage. There's a whole lot of stuff there. There's new stuff in planned activities about redefining and solidifying the network, investigating barriers and challenges, and implementing the national ticketing section on page 41. That's good. We've now got a definite statement in there that wasn't there before, that we're not going to do the new system any earlier than 2026. Previously it was, I think, towards 2027. Whereas now it's like there's a no earlier statement there. There's some text missing and gone from some of these route descriptions that needs to go. There's maps missing, there's text missing. And for example, there's reference to 2 route options for Route 2. I can work with staff just to check that there's nothing that's fallen through there, but I just wanted to raise with that you because if there's talk delegating this to me. There's a lot of missing text on the Hastings Flaxmere Route 4 description. This just seems to have fallen out. It hasn't been shown as a track change. And where are we? Just talk to me very briefly about these legislative requirements. There's a lot of new text in the legislative requirements section.
Yeah, correct. Through you, Chair, that is a direct result of the LTMA changes that have been brought about by the implementation of the Sustainable Public Transport Framework. So the legislative requirements tied up in the LTMA have changed in line with that new operating framework, and as such, that is reflected in the plan. And the assessment against that is also changed.
Yeah. Okay, so that's what that new text is all for, and it looks great to me. One of the things I was a bit worried about it, though, it says on page 65, transport planning in Hawke's Bay is integrated across all councils, with HPRC being the only entity that plans, procures and runs public transport services. Can we put at this stage?
Sure.
Because if we're talking about joint management units, or Wairoa does one through a community trust and rates for, I don't know. Can we just put at this stage? Okay. Now, fare box recovery. Oh, the significance policy. Just be aware, everyone, that we are displacing engagement over things that some people might think are significant. This is actually saying that we could, even I think materially reduce frequency on a given route. And it always said that, but if the overall level of service across the system is the same, we don't have to consult. So do read the text, and if you've got any problems with it, let me know. But what I think I like about it is that we've increased the provision for targeted consultation. So instead of having to do a big bang, and I would like a bit more express reference to if we were to reduce route frequency, we'd engage with that route, even where at the overall level is the same.
If I may, Chair, just to expand on that targeted engagement point, Russell and I have been working through quite a detailed, I guess call it stakeholder identification and mapping exercise that is then subsequently going to turn into a reasonably extensive communications and engagement plan for that specific purpose of engaging with targeted communities or specific communities and specific user groups to be able to ground truth and validate the routes and the overall network and those
Is that going to be in
things.
here?
We could make it an appendices of.
No, it's just more about having a bullet point that says, an example of targeted consultation would be where you make changes to the route frequency whilst maintaining it overall that doesn't warrant,
Yeah.
Okay, so finally, you'll be happy to know, private share, we've got 11.5 and 13.1%. Did we manage to haggle that down? Because this had us at 25% in the last meeting minutes. So how we got down to, I'm delighted, but how did we get down to 13.1%?
So 25%, I'll need to refer exactly what you're talking about, was the previous.
That's what, remember
Yes,
we got sent the
correct.
letter?
So to answer, yes, so the initial, and this is more a national approach, is to try and get people up, group regions up to 25%. I think we were grouped into a number of regions. We've subsequently met with NZTA several times to get our targets back down to something that we think we can jointly achieve.
And the NZTA is happy with that?
With where you've landed?
Yeah.
Yes, so far so good.
That's great.
You're in the green box, not everyone is.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's the end of my, I guess, shotgun array of all of these things. I just want to make sure that everyone's got that in their head so that if you want to, now everyone else can ask questions. You may feel safer to delegate me to get this signed off. Where those changes have been made, there's a few little things I need to tweak with the staff. I am a little bit concerned that there is this statement under fare setting on page 72. Ultimately, fare levels will need to be balanced with ensuring that passengers contribute sufficiently to the cost of operating the service, and I really don't know what that means. Is that a Trojan horse for sort of significant increases?
Not at all. I think it is I guess for this committee, this community, for our co-funders to find that balance. And that balance will change over years and time.
Yeah.
So we're not putting a particular measure in place forever.
Okay. Questions? Anyone else got questions or points they want to raise about the changes that you've enjoyed reading since Tuesday? Councillor Buddo.
You've already asked my question around the minimum fare chargeable, which I thought was interesting, and I was wondering has that been an issue that we've faced in the previous iterations of this, and is that?
Yes, through the chair, what's happened, for instance, significant change since the last RPTP in 2022 is there's been a big move from taxis to companion services, and they per kilometre cost more. It's just the type of service they offer. And as I said before, there's been no kind of containment options within our current policy to try and keep that down, and this is what's putting that in place.
It's a point of significant pressure on.
Yes.
Councillor Price.
Wouldn't be a transport meeting if I didn't mention My Way in Napier. I'm sure you've dropped it out somewhere.
Through the chair, yes, the My Way is still there as an option, but what we've identified through our trial in Hastings, and this is through a review in Hastings, is that the cost per passenger is significantly above what we can provide via a fixed route service. So it hasn't proved to be quite the correct outcome we were looking for in Hastings, so we've got a new fixed route service for there. And at this stage, we haven't identified anywhere else where we, with the available funding we have, can put it elsewhere. So it's not off the table, and the chair is obviously a very big supporter of My Way, but it's just not in the right place, and we don't have the funding to put it somewhere where perhaps it would be better suited.
I think
Because when we look at the new transport system that's a couple of years away, becomes more of a part of that than what it would be now.
Yes, yeah. It's got a future, just we can't provide for it right now.
But we have got several references to it about it being suitable in two situations. One, in smaller communities like Wairoa, Central Hawke's Bay, where you just can't sustain a fixed route service, but in the urban centres as a complement to the fixed route service. And I think, so those references are in there, but what has come out, and Councillor Price is quite right, is under our planned future activities. There was something previously about My Way, and it has gone altogether. Maybe that should come back in just to sort of explain that. In other words, because that was actually one of the changes I discussed with you, Bryce, was to continue it in Hastings and evaluate it as a complement for fixed routes in other centres. So I think we need to probably put that back in, because I don't want to lose sight of it. One day, like the Waikari Gorge, someone's going to turn up in government and say, hey, I love public transport. And we go, well, look, it's been our public transport plan for the last 5 years. Please, you know. So, okay. Thank you for raising that. Other questions or comments, Dean?
Mr Chairman, can I just ask, I know we've talked about it, and where are we with school bus transport?
Glad you raised that, Harvey, because we're going to come to it later, but we wrote to Minister Stanford as a committee, and we just said this isn't good enough, and we want you to change that archaic 100-year-old rule that you are applying, as they explained, to the letter. And we basically got a letter back saying, well, I don't know what it said, but it didn't really say anything. It spent 2 pages saying nothing. And so a suggestion from Councillor Kerr the other day, which I thought was a good one, and we'll come back to, was to actually write to the Minister of Regulation, who I believe is Mr Seymour, and say, look, you're all about access to choice and what school you want to go to. You're all about dumb regulation. Well, here's a classic. Would you have a look at it, please? Because until that regulation's gone, you're going to have kids hitchhiking from Te Puhi. So we'll come back to that. Thank you for raising it. Okay, any other questions or comments on this paper?
Just perhaps just one comment. My Way was based on a successful operation in Timaru. Do we know if that is still going well down there, or, you know, is it?
Through the chair, yes, I can answer that. Yeah, My Way continues to operate in Timaru, and I believe some certainty will be provided for future funding for that to go forward. Yeah, Timaru's, again, every community is unique, and their fixed route service didn't work for them, but again, it is at some additional cost.
Right? Okay. Well, what I'm suggesting we do, the current resolution is to receive the report or the plan, agrees that decisions are not significant. So effectively, we can decide to put this to consultation without consulting with the community. I think that's what it's saying. And endorses that the transport plan for inclusion in the HBRC annual plan for public consultation, subject to the chair of the committee's approval of the final wording. All right? Would everyone be happy with that? And I will only be really finessing what we've talked about. So would someone like to move that? Thank you, Mayor Little, and seconded by Councillor Butto. All in favour?
Aye.
Anyone against? Thank you, team, for your incredible hard work, and thank you all for your patience in allowing me to go through that. Okay. Next paper is the, I believe, cash fares. Who right now, by the way, has got any loose change in your pocket? There you go.
Always got to have more parking, right?
Yes. Okay. That's another topic. Thank you. Russell, would you like to speak to that?
Through the chair, just take the paper as read. The essence is that we do have a point in time when we transfer to the national ticketing system, sometime between September and January, that we can make a decision about whether we accept cash fares or not. From a council's viewpoint, we are a PCBU, so anything that we ask our contractors to do, for instance, collect cash fares on the bus, does raise a safety issue for bus drivers, both from a robbery viewpoint, but also just the handling of change and the health effects issues around that. Equally, we're also acutely aware that we provide services to disadvantaged members of the community where use of cards can be restricted, etc. So we have to take that balance, and it is a knife-edge balance which way to go. However, what I would say is that Auckland Transport has been cash-free since COVID days. I believe Wellington and Christchurch are also looking to take this point in time to go cash-free as well. So we wouldn't be by ourselves doing that. Neither would we be if we chose to stay with cash where other regions. And we believe it's something to include in the public transport plan as a question, and it will be a key question one of 3 questions that we raise, because we think the community will have a real opinion on it. So we want to listen, and then we'll make a sort of informed decision when we consider the submissions to the plan in May.
Thank you. Anything you want to add to that, Bryce?
No, nothing from me, thank you.
So there'll be a specific question. What are your views about cashless bus operation with the new Motu facility? And we're not making a call on that now. We're basically deciding to test the waters with our community. Okay, so questions and discussion, folks.
Just one, Mr Chair. What's the plan in this for when communication / technology lets us down and we've got bus services with no connectivity?
Through the chair, I'll just answer that. We obviously continue to run the services, let the people on board. We forgo the fare. We hope it's a rare occasion, but we don't leave anyone behind.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Me a little?
Yeah, I guess the biggest, obviously, the group is going to be the elderly, and it'd be, I think we probably need to talk to like age concern and places like that, because I think you'll find quite a bit of opposition to that. And a lot of people just feel like they've taken things away that they had no say on. Simple as that.
Through the chair, most of the elderly have the very fortunate position of actually they travel for free with their Super Gold card, so they're actually less affected. The effect we think is more profound is on parents getting their kids to school, where it's easy to flick them a coin or two, and now they would have to be outfitted with a card. So that's the area that we really want to focus on our consultation.
Don't forget the elderly might be taking their grandkids out as well.
Yes, so they're exactly the same thing. Yep.
All right. Well, look, I mean, I can understand the merit in having the conversation. It's a bit like checkbooks. I thought the banks were really brutal with that. Literally left people stranded. I don't know why they couldn't have left checkbooks in place. Well, they couldn't have said now, but you've got 10 years, right? Get your head and let that sort of generation move on. I'm keen to hear what the public views are about this, but I understand why we're doing it from a safety to drivers and efficiency perspective. Any other discussion? Should we just move receipt of the paper? And I think it's an information only item, isn't it? Hang on, I'm in the wrong part of the agenda. Yeah. So that we receive and consider. Someone like to move that? Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Price. Someone like to second it? Councillor Buddow, thank you. All in favour?
Aye.
Anyone against? That's carried. The next one, fare increases or unfair increases or something.
Through the chair, I think we actually almost covered a lot of this in our previous paper on the draft RPTP. But this is looking to carry on an annual fare increase review requirement, and so last May we increased our fares, and we're proposing to increase them another 5% this year. And as an indication, if all things considered remain the same, we would do this another 5% in May of next year as well. This is part of a plan that NZTA and ourselves have put together to try and improve our private share without endangering our public transport patronage uplift, which we're also experiencing at this time as well. So it's a measured approach.
Yeah. Okay, a couple of questions from me.
NZTA and ourselves.
Yes. So I'm looking at the table, unfortunately to go like that to that. It looks like there are between 10 and 20 cents a bus route. That's more coins in the pocket that have to be jingling around for a while. And more fiddly for the drivers too, no doubt. There's your 80 cents change, your 90 cents change. You know, that could take forever. Have we done any research on what you refer to in this report as what they call in technical terms the price elasticity of demand? Like, it's to do with this fare box recovery. If you double the charge, you might halve the patronage. What does a 10 or 20 cent charge likely to do to patronage?
Through the chair, typically fare elasticity is 30%. So if I put my fares up, say from $1 to $2, I might expect a 30% decrease in patronage.
So 30% for a doubling?
Yeah. So that's locally, that is does not appear to be the case. We've returned to a full fares structure after a period of a central government initiated half-price fares. We've not seen the decrease. What we've actually seen is a return to normal. What that means is that the Hawke's Bay patch passengers are less elastic. In other words, they keep using the bus even if the fares have gone up. So I don't believe that 30% applies.
Right. Okay. So in other words, a 5% increase isn't going to be a major in terms of reduced patronage. It says the proposed fare increase is projected to generate additional revenue. Any idea how much?
Yes, I do. It will generate approximately another 35,000 at current levels.
Within the context of a $7 million budget.
Yeah, well, that's the whole issue. Is we're only getting 10 or so % recovery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, small steps, I suppose.
It is. Yeah.
Okay. I think when the sparks really started flying was when the government subsidy came off and went from like $1 to $2, and the family went from $4 to $20 a day sort of thing sometimes, and that was when it was really hurting, wasn't it? We had to move back and. Yep. Okay. Any other questions or comments from committee members? Yeah. Now, look, my understanding is that this is information only. We don't get to set the fares. I asked this question last year. Why wasn't I told? Well, operations, get out of your lane, get out of our lane. Anyway, so there we go. We've got the information. I'll move that we receive and consider that report. Have someone to second that? I might go Mayor Little, just to get everyone's share the love, so to speak. We'll move on to the next item 8, which is Regional Transport Program update.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll speak to this one, and I'll just go through each work stream very briefly. I don't think there will be anything terribly new to the committee. So Regional Land Transport Plan, of course, we received our allocations and such forth in September last year, and RCAs are still, all funded parties, including ourselves, have just been working through what programs might look like based on funding. And we are going to be starting the next RLTP later this year, slash early into next year. So the wheels keep moving. Going on to speed management planning, so as the committee may remember at the 6th December meeting, we presented a paper on speed management planning. The rule at that point in time had been changed to remove the requirement for a regional speed management plan and to make TA speed management plans optional, save for a few things like speed management around schools, drop-off times, and that particular paper also set out some of the speed increases that were set to occur across both local roads and state highways. So of interest to the committee, of course, State Highway 5 will be going back up. Public consultation is happening on 3 small stretches of State Highway 5 where the proposal is potentially to retain the 80k speed limit, those being Tarawera, Tipahui and around Te Haroto. So what our recommendation there is to simply leave that up to the community to be involved with and to provide feedback during that consultation period. And if memory serves, the consultation period is open till I think about the 13th of March, I've even said it there in the paper. RoadSafe Hawke's Bay, so we have a separate agenda item on that, and I won't really go into any detail here. Active transport, so planning to further progress the active transport strategy is going on. We'll look to pick that up later in the year, particularly once the things like the public transport plan are out of the way. Also in the public transport plan, I guess just to the multimodal integration point, we have retained quite a number of policies around looking at multimodal integration, potentially creating key hubs for the likes of, for example, the likes of Clive, for active transport integration from Cape Coast, Te Wanga, Hawana and the like, as but one example. We don't have a substantial budget, if any at all, to actually progress the strategy, so it will be done effectively on the smell of an oily rag when we do get to it. Public transport implementation, I don't think there's anything necessarily new there that we haven't traversed in previous papers and the meeting so far. Again, the main thrust of that is that we're working towards that public transport plan consultation in conjunction with the annual plan in April. And that's it for the TAG program tracker for February.
Right. Questions, anyone? I've got one. Planning and further progress on the active transport strategy. Some progress has been made to date.
Yeah, it has.
Tell me about that.
So it did, admittedly, we did do, so we made some progress likely pre-cyclone. So there's, the committee may be aware there was a 2015 regional cycle strategy, I believe it was, and then there was another one, a refresh done in 2018, maybe 2020, but I don't think that actually got endorsed by any committee. So that was sitting there. So we conducted a review of that. We also overlaid that with trail plans, with the HDC, active transport corridor plans, and their longer term strategy as well. So the foundation, I guess, of what the current and the future network could look like are sitting there. Within the TAG, we've had discussions, and I'll just underline discussions around some sort of principles, priorities, key things that we might want to see in a regional active transport strategy. And the TAG have also been involved in a recent-ish, possibly about 6 months ago, a piece of work that the Wairoa District Council commissioned WSP to undertake in their area around active transport routes and networks. So we were able to feed in some of those sort of focus areas that we had discussed some period of time ago. So there's a few things sort of brewing away in the background on that.
Okay. Any other questions from anyone? Thank you, Linda.
question slash comment, just on the State Highway 5. I was going to cover it in presentation, but thank you for raising it now. I do think that it warrants consideration from the committee, your role and the opportunity to put in a submission. I understand, and I've been in communication with Deputy Mayor Kerr, and the communities along State Highway 5 are having community huies to discuss the approach to what is proposed. Now, my understanding is from there, other councils will then decide how they wish to progress on their submission. The reason that I raise it is that the rule is very specific about how we make decisions. So if the community and local road users, local councils are happy for those 3 short sections to return to 100, then it's not a biggie. You can submit to say that, but it's not a biggie. If, however, the communities do want to retain the 80, it's really important to note that it's on the basis of community and public acceptance, and that is defined as majority support. And when we say majority support, the rule is again very specific in that it's got to be shown by groups of local road users, and they are defined in the rule as local iwi, local councils, local road users as in freight, schools and businesses along the route, as well as the local community. So it's just a point to note that if the community does want to retain it, it is important to submit. So just leave that there. It might be worthwhile just having some liaison with council or care and the community.
Thank you. And I did have a little question beside that and I overlooked it. So thank you for raising that. So are we one vote? Is the RTC one person in the majority? I mean, if it's done by majority, but you said, I think you just said councils are...
Yes, so I would recommend, if the desire of the community to retain it, it is on number of submissions.
A number of submissions.
So, yeah, so what we've said to the community is, depending on which way they wish to go, it would be better to put in individual submissions than one submission on behalf of the community, because it is on majority of submissions, so majority of support. So you may wish to, depending on if the 80 kilometre is what is wanted to be retained, consider an RTC submission and individual council submissions.
The reason I'm teasing this out is that I think if I were minded to lodge a submission, and I'm never looking for more work, is that it would say we support retaining 80 kilometres to the extent that it's preferred by the local community. And does that help? I suppose it's another submission in their favour.
If that is what they want, yeah.
Because I mean, I wouldn't want to make a blanket call otherwise, but are there different views on whether we should lodge a submission, and if so, what it should say?
I think that's my guidance, as in with liaising with council or care and the community who've got their finger, she's got the finger on the pulse as to what's happening. And I think the community huies, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they're planned for very early in March, like the 1st or the 2nd of March.
Could delegate this one to her. Ian, what are your thoughts about this?
I think we could probably go back to that workshop we had at the outset when it was reduced. There was quite a bit of work done on the worst sectors of the road.
Yeah.
I think Councillor Kerr, she chaired that from memory, but there's probably quite a few minutes that might relate to the areas in question, and I agree. Some of them definitely need to be kept at a lower speed, but we've got to be careful that they're not blanketed too far, I suppose.
Total of about 3K or something, aren't they?
Yeah, it's very specific. So there is maps on the website and in the consultation documents as to where they start and stop. It's very specific.
Yep. And I think they relate definitely to the ones at that workshop. They were the same areas.
So just to clarify, for you, Ian, rather than you put one in for your company, you'd be better getting your drivers to put in a submission. Would that be the...
Certainly the impacts on local freight. I mean, we have, national freight, the advocacy groups, national companies are putting in their views right across the country and all of those that are consulting. And that will carry weight. But the rule, like I say, is very specific on local support or not for what's proposed.
Thank you.
So if there was 100 went in that are very similarly worded, does that, from locals, would that carry a lot more punch than one general industry advocate one?
Yes.
Okay.
Mayor Little.
I think you've got to be really careful, because I think this was a little bit like the cone thing, overuse syndrome. So people really didn't appreciate that. They didn't really. I think we diluted the importance of speed restrictions by doing what was done, and I think it's so important that we really reiterate those speed restrictions need to be in the areas that need it, and people will adhere to them better than they were, because honestly, you travel back from Taupo and you're getting past the whole time doing 80 Ks. No one just, and I guess local communities, yes, we have to listen to them, but, probably everybody, I'd love 70 Ks all the way in front of my farm too, so I can just put my stock out of the road and move them up the road and not to care about anyone. But the fact of the matter is, it's 100 K and I have to do the right things around my stock. So we just got to be careful of the reasons of why they want it lowered.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Little. It's an interesting discussion. So did you get the sense from talking to Councillor Kerr that she was keen that this committee did lodge a submission?
Didn't specifically ask that, and she didn't say. She's very focused on the community PUIs and views.
Have you got a sense of that at all?
I don't have a sense on whether or not she'd like this committee to do something about it.
Well, what I'm going to propose is that we delegate to me to liaise with Councillor Kerr to determine whether, and if so, what submission we make on this issue. The suggestion. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, sorry, I've got to do something to say, but I think Angela had something.
Oh, sorry, I missed that.
Local police, myself, road policing manager for Eastern District, have a very strong view. I'm a little bit constrained about what I can say here, so I'll be putting it through our head office to see whether a submission can go in. I've also been approached by FENS to make that a joint submission, so that would be agency submission, but given the very bland input from police nationally, I don't know whether my views will be able to be put forward. So, yeah, and I don't know whether I'm not a voting member of the committee, so I don't know whether...
You're an advisory member, I'd love to hear your advice.
Yep.
So I literally didn't see it, that hand going up, and I apologise.
Yeah, so I do have a view around, and that's based on crash data. I did some work last year, a very strong view opposing the raising of the speed limit in particular areas, and of concern over the New Year period when I worked. There were several crashes with trucks near Mohaka, rafting where there's no centre line markings, the road surface was swimming, just lucky nothing coming the other way. So a lot of close calls where you say our death rate is not that high on State 5, but there's certainly been a number of very close calls. Another patch further north of Tarawera than what is the consultation area, where we have, I think in a period of a month, over 30 vehicles cross the centre line and either go into the bank or into the rail on the other side, only to be told that the railing's doing its job. Every time a vehicle goes over the centre line, that could be death, as far as I'm concerned. And myself and other leaders within FENS are quite concerned about the raise of the speed or the proposed reversal of the speed limit. So wanting to be able to put and articulate that into submissions. I don't know how successful I will be nationally in having that over the line and getting it submitted. I don't think I will be. But I do have a local view, which is interesting to see whether police are actually counted as community, because my staff are up there every day, myself included at times, and we are part of that community that police that road, that attend the crashes, the serious injury crashes that are happening all the time. So yeah, I have a very strong view, and I could give advice on what I know and the data that we have from our traffic crash data. So there's a certain sense of frustration that it would be good to be able to make submissions. I just don't know if I can. But that's about what I can say here.
sharing that with us, Angela. Councillor Taylor, do you have some reflections as well?
Do you mean that you wouldn't be able to be part of an RTC submission?
I'm not sure, I have to get clearance for that. Yeah, everything has to go through our head office. I did clarify that last week, so I could certainly advise the RTC and provide crash data and information I have, inform others.
Yeah, I don't want to speak on behalf of FENZ, but a lot of the locals up there are the emergency responders in these sections of road, and I was surprised that the 3 pieces were so short. Certainly don't advocate for it all being 80, but I was surprised that that they were narrowed down so much. So I guess I would be in support of an RTC submission supporting what the locals want up there. But yeah, I don't fully agree with the areas that they are.
We are kind of constrained by the scope of it. I mean, it's like Neil Little said before, the pendulum swings too far both ways. You know, if they'd started with a smaller bite right at the beginning of just, say, Te Puhui to Tarawera or something like that at 90, I don't think anyone would have blinked and they would have respected it. You go all the way to Eastdale, back to Waipuna, and then come down to 3Ks, you know, where's the common sense middle ground in here? And it seems to be off the table, unfortunately, the way the directions come down from the minister. So, anyway, Mayor Little, you wanted to say?
Yeah, I'm quite interested in that crossing the centre line. You know, is it the crossing the centre line because they're doing 100 Ks, or they're crossing the centre line because they've never learned to drive properly in the first place? And maybe this is the stuff we should need to look at more training of young ones, because there's a lot of shocking drivers out there. And, you know, I used to travel from, once again, Taupo to Napier, 80K, go back onto our State Highway 2, 100K, which is probably the worst road in the whole of Hawke's Bay, and people weren't crossing the centre lines there. So I think a lot more work needs to be done. Why are these clowns crossing the centre line? You know, it's just crazy. That should be like Secretariat. You do not cross that line. That's just what you learn when you get your car licence.
It's certainly a very good question, and yeah, a lot of these I do not believe are driver behaviour. I think the road lends itself to tossing people on the other side of the road. So the design actually is a contributing factor, and it's something that we always raise where we can with TOC at the time to go and do road inspections, but nothing's actually ever fixed around that.
Angela, can I just stop you, because I don't want the community to miss out on this conversation. We just cut the live feed.
Sure.
and I wouldn't mind if anyone, the one person that ever watches them, did have the opportunity. No, this isn't a case of the microphone being removed, but this is actually an important discussion that people might be interested in. So can we just pause and see if we can sort that out?
Yeah, all the internet seems to have cut and the feeds just stopped, so we're just doing a restart as it's recommended on there.
I see it's rebooting.
And yours did the same thing, because they're 2 separate kind of connected things. So,
okay, so we'll just have a pit stop.
Yeah.
Right? And we'll come back, and it'd almost be great if Mayor Little could say all that again, and then we could respond, at least summarise the point, because that's the age-old debate, isn't it?
Totally agree with you about that.